All right, let's dive right into this explainer and really demystify the core mechanics of modern AI. If you've ever wondered how artificial intelligence actually learns, beneath all the crazy buzzwords, well, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're breaking down exactly what neural networks and deep learning really are. Section 1. The Great AI Race, Working Together. So to really wrap our heads around how these systems work, I want you to picture a massive relay race, but with thousands of runners lined up in successive rows. When a starting gun goes off, the first row doesn't actually run a full lap. They just do this tiny, super specific job and pass a signal forward. And this just keeps continuing, row after row, until a final result is produced at the very end. Now, here's the crazy part. No single runner understands the whole race, but together, they accomplish the impossible. It's honestly a perfect illustration of emergent complexity. The structure itself is what creates the success. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of a Network Inside the Machine. Okay, let's translate those human runners into actual technical architecture. A neural network is simply a machine learning structure that's loosely inspired by how brain cells connect and pass signals to each other. So instead of athletes handing off physical batons, we have software components working in a computer's memory. They adjust the data slightly and then just hand it off to the very next component in line. And that brings us to a term you've probably seen absolutely dominating the headlines lately, deep learning. When you hear this buzzword, it actually just means we're using neural networks stacked with a ton of layers. We're talking dozens or even hundreds of those rows of runners. And it's super important to remember that the word deep refers entirely to the depth of the layers themselves, not the depth of intelligence. The computer isn't sitting there having profound thoughts. It's literally just passing data through a massive architectural maze. Now, if we zoom in on an individual runner in our digital relay race, we find what's called a node, or a neuron. And on its own, a node is trivially simple. It literally just takes numbers in, performs some basic arithmetic, and passes a number out. That's it. But in modern models, there are billions of these simple nodes working simultaneously. It's not magic, and it's definitely not thinking. It's just processing an isolated piece of mathematical information and sending that result forward. But the true power? That gets unleashed when we organize these simple nodes into 3 distinct layers. The journey starts at the input layer, which basically catches the raw data, like the raw pixels of a photograph. Then that data travels into the hidden layers, which transform the information further. And honestly, they're only called hidden because they operate completely behind the scenes. Finally, the output layer receives that last baton pass and produces our final answer. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, Building Complexity from Simplicity. Let's see exactly how this builds up in practice. Say we ask our network to recognize a photo of a cat. Our input layer takes in all the raw pixels. But the very first hidden layers, they aren't looking for an animal at all. They're just detecting the absolute most basic visual elements. We're talking a contrast between dark and light, maybe a vertical line, or a patch of orange. At this stage, the network has zero concept of what it's actually looking at. Then, as the signal passes forward, the middle layers take those super basic edges and start combining them into slightly more complex geometric shapes. The network starts calculating things like, hey, a curve and a line make an oval, or 2 angled lines make a sharp triangle. And finally, the data hits the end of the line. The deepest layers take those geometric shapes and assemble them into recognizable objects, an eye, an ear, and eventually, a cat. No single node ever knew what a cat was. The recognition emerges entirely from this incredibly fast relay race of really simple geometric transformations. Let's look at Section 4, AI in your pocket, real-world examples. Think about the face unlock feature on your smartphone right now. It actually perfectly maps to our cat example. The input layer captures your raw facial data. Then the early layers detect contrast, the middle layers assemble the specific geometry of your eyes and nose, and the output layer makes a final unlock decision. And the most incredible part of all this entire relay race processes millions of calculations in a fraction of a second, completely invisibly to you. And finally, Section 5, Myth versus Reality. How smart is it? Okay, before we wrap up, we really need to address a pretty massive misconception here. While comparing AI to a digital brain is a helpful starting analogy, the reality is that a neural network does absolutely not work exactly like the human brain. Human brains use incredibly complex biological and chemical processes that scientists are still just trying to map out. Neural networks are merely inspired by that, but they run entirely on calculus and linear algebra. It's a brilliant machine, for sure, but it is not a biological mind. So, bringing it all together, the immense power of modern AI doesn't come from some magical brain. It comes directly from stacking layers upon layers of simple mathematical nodes. The complexity emerges layer by layer, and it's the sheer depth that drives the incredible capabilities we're seeing today. Really, it is the massive scale of the relay race that creates the magic. To finish off this explainer, I want to leave you with a quick question to think about. Can you think of a phone app you use every single day that is secretly running a deep neural network behind the scenes? I mean, from the maps routing your commute to the algorithms suggesting your next playlist, the great AI relay race is constantly running all around us. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.